Because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. A relic of the Cold War.
Point taken.
Hi folks, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show devoted to board and card games, or is it a dream? On today's show I'm looking at Pandemic Legacy Season 0. I have finally finished the wretched game, yes. I have played Pandemic Legacy Season 1, I've played Pandemic Legacy Season 2, and now finally I got to play Season 0. The thing is that I play these games with a group of friends of mine who are big Pandemic fans, but we don't always get to meet every fortnight as we like, and there are bit breaks, and there's obviously, time when we want to do other things, and so these games take a long time for me to finish. So there's no way that I would ever do a Legacy game as a review copy, with the exception of something like Ticket to Ride Legacy, where I literally did binge through that one. That was a one-off. But this one has been on the go for, I think, the last 6 to 8 months, I think. I think we started about 8 months ago, and then we've been playing it mostly every fortnight, playing a game every fortnight. And then we took a month break around sort of January, December time, 2-month break. And then we took another break in March, after we played it in February. And finally, as of last night, we played the last 2 games and finished it. So I figured, you know what? As a little bonus, I figured I'd give you my thoughts on the game, both spoiler and non-spoiler. So there's going to be 2 videos, one for each, and I suspect I won't have much to say in the non-spoiler version, because there's a few things I want to talk about in more detail in the other ones. They're kind of similar to what I did with Ticket to Ride Legacy, really.
Wingus, dingus, listen up.
So in Pandemic Legacy Season 0, you are in 1960s Cold War alternate history. And the idea is that you are part of the American CIA, and there are rumors about the Soviet spies cooking up something nasty. They call it MEDUSA, a potential new plague. But that's all the information you've got to go on to begin with. And what happens is, much like the other Pandemic Legacy season games, you play over the course of a calendar year, so January through to December, and in each month you have a certain amount of objectives to achieve, and these objectives will, for the most part, feature more in line with kind of like spy type movies, James Bond, Mission Impossible and that, where you're, again, I don't want to spoil specifics, but as you go through each month, you will complete these objectives, and if you fail them all, then you've got to repeat the month. Otherwise, you're able to progress to the next month, and then as you go through each month, the story unfolds and more stuff unlocks. You open boxes, you open envelopes, you get more stickers to put on the board, and the map will change depending on what decisions you make. It is very much like the other Pandemic Legacy games, although with 1 or 2, differences between them. Season 1 had just the normal world map, and it was the world map, and that never changed. Season 2 did something different, where it kind of had a map that unfolded as the game goes on. This one goes back to the Season 1 style, where it has the map of the world, and that map, doesn't change. You don't suddenly add another continent or anything like that anywhere. So it's sticking to the one board and sort of steering away from what Pandemic Legacy Season 2 did. So okay, that was a bit of a basic overview, but then it's gotta be basic. I can't do spoilers, hence this video is going to be quite quick. You play through about 15, 16 games on average. And yes, you could feasibly do it in 12, but yeah, good luck with that. That's not going to happen. But somewhere 15, 16, maximum 20 if you really had bad times, should be the amount of stuff that you get from this game. Now, I have played Season 1 and Season 2, and I'll mention in the spoiler review which one, or the rankings I have for each, but this is now the 3rd iteration of this, and when Season 1 came out, it was a big deal. It was one of the first, major mainstream Legacy games that really took off. Really took off with people. And part of that was because you took the pandemic mechanic, which, I like Pandemic fine. I have Iberia on the shelf. I can't remember the last time I played it. I like Pandemic, I don't love it. It's a good but not great one for me. But my friends really love the Pandemic series, that's why I play it with them. And, this is now the 3rd iteration of a Legacy game. The first one was kind of like a revolution, and it really did something new. Season 2 evolved from that principle and again did something new and different. This one kind of feels like it's taken a step back, and I don't just simply mean when it says Season 0 taking a step back in time. I mean, I think it's just taken a step back in terms of gameplay and mechanics. Not to say that this game is bad, but it feels like it's being too much like Season 1 but not as good as season 1. Like, the story beats in here are not particularly interesting. You know, you have occasional times where you have to fill out, like, you know, little questions now and again, and depending which ones you pick, you might get a new card that appears. But honestly, there's not a huge amount of difference between the choices, and it's kind of the illusion of choice. You feel like, oh, there's lots of branching paths depending on what one we do, and it really isn't that big a deal. You just get a slight variation on a, you know, a reward or a penalty depending on what you pick. The story paragraphs that you read, the debriefs as you go through there, aren't particularly interesting either. I never found myself particularly immersed in this theme, and granted, I'm not a big Cold War fan myself, although I love James Bond. I mean, I like the the more silly sort of spy thrillers and things like that. Perhaps I'm not really into the serious stuff, but here, most of the time I kind of forgot what was going on with the plot. You know, you read a little bit of a paragraph and that's it, after spending ages trying to do a mission. You're like, oh, well, that's done. Okay, well, I guess we'll move on to the next one. And when you go between the different games, I remember Pandemic Season 1 having like a lot of, well, not a lot, but a couple of really big moments. Like, okay, this is normal. Whoa, that was a big one. That was a big one. Okay, that's cool. Let's see how this turns out. And then you carry on a bit longer, and then, oh my God, I cannot believe that just happened. You've got these big awakening moments in the first game, and even Season 2 had a couple of those. This one doesn't have any. There's none. Nothing in this game from all the unlocks felt like, wow, you know, oh my God, amazing, that is so cool. If anything, it rinse and repeats a lot. You know, the mission types, for example, there's not that many mission types in the game, and they just keep coming up over and over and over again. One in particular is basically, and it's not really much of a spoiler, you get it in the first mission, but it's essentially like identifying a target city. So, you know, your objective is to do something with a particular city. You don't know which one it is to begin with, and as the game goes on, you'll eliminate the other choices. And you have to do something at those particular target cities. They're very hard to do, but they come up all the time. Like, this is a mission that repeats ad nauseum, and the 2 or 3 max, probably about 2 or 3, yeah, tops, other choices, again, rinse repeat a lot, particularly in the latter half of the whole saga. And some of them aren't particularly effective at what they do. The biggest mistake that I did get from this was that they have a lot of RNG elements, random number generator moments in a sense, where, you know, the game has already got a bit of a random factor. You've got a deck of cards, that's the player cards you're drawing and all the infection cards, and you may just have a setup where it's going to hose you or make life a lot more difficult. That's just the nature of the beast. That is what Pandemic is like. But this one kind of cranks that up to 12. There are certain mission types here, for example, where luck of the draw from both of those decks is going to wildly swing the difficulty curve. You know, the difficulty curve in this is kind of ridiculous at times. It expects so much of you, you know, to achieve, where you just cannot physically do it. I don't know how you would, unless, like, Cthulhu himself smiled upon you and made the deck exactly as you need it to be. And that's not just, oh, the deck has these locations up first. I'm talking that the deck has the exact composition to get the right cards on the right player at the right time, because otherwise you just will not be able to do it. And that got frustrating at times. Now, we did, you know, succeed most of the missions in the sense that we progressed to the next one. I think we only failed 3 missions, I think, total, like a proper failure. But there were a few adequates, certainly further down the line. Earlier on, we were succeeding quite a lot. But yeah, it does quickly ramp up. It's not so bad in the first, say, 4 to 5 months, but after that, it really does expect the stars to align to do some of those objectives. And I can only go into more detail in the spoiler section, but it did get a little bit annoying. And as I got to the end of this campaign, and this is not unique to Pandemic Legacy, I've done this with other Legacy games as well, they go on a bit long. I would like a Legacy game to be relatively short. You know, give me a 5 to 10 mission Legacy game. It can be relatively cheap, it doesn't need a ton of content, but 10 missions. 10 missions would be all I need, because by the time it starts getting a little bit samey and not that interesting, you are about to finish. by the time we got to like the 12th, 13th game, I was kind of like done. Like, are we done with this now? Can we finish it? And I was so glad that we were able to play 2 final games, November and December, last night, because I didn't want to have to wait another week to do December, because I was kind of like, look, this has been okay, it's been fine, but can we move on to something else now? And I think everybody around the table got to that sort of point, although we did have different opinions about which Pandemic Legacies we like more than others. So with this one, it just felt like more of a rehash trip, much like Season 1, but without the interesting story beats to go with it. There's certainly some cool things in here, don't get me wrong, and most of those cool aspects, I think, are more to do with character selection. I don't want to go into too much detail, but the way you select characters in this game is done a lot more, much more interesting. It fits with the theme, but it's also a cool, fun mechanic that adds a bit of variety and customization, which you don't typically get with a lot of the Pandemic games. Even the other Pandemic Legacy like characters that you had weren't as customizable as these ones, so I do give it props for that. But a couple of other negatives I can think of is the aesthetics. The aesthetics are terrible in this game. I'm sorry, there are some people who like the look of this. Do those people see the world in monochrome? I'm not sure, but this is a board filled with nothing but various types of grey. I'm not even sure I knew that many shades of grey existed, but this board has it. And yeah, I know it's meant to be Cold War, 1960s, it's not exactly flamboyant, Austin Powers style colours, is it? Come on, you can put a little bit of colour into the game. There's more colour on the player pieces, and even then they're very muted colours, so this thing just feels and looks very bland on the table, and it's never going to turn heads. You would almost not even recognise it as a Pandemic game. It looks more like something out of Twilight Struggle, and it just carried on that way. It was kind of a bit of a shame. The components as well, not bad. I mean, the stuff you get in the Legacy boxes works on the most part. Most of it is stickers and more cards, and you apply them to the board. But there was one component that was a bit of a major problem. I can't spoil too much, but the character selection is done on a particular component. And this component has you rubbing off like little bits, a bit like crossing off a scratch card with a scratch card with a coin. Those foil bits. And the problem is that there's a lot of people who have dud of components in respect of that. My character in particular had bits that needed to be crossed off, and they didn't rub off properly. Like the foil didn't work, or it was duff. And this is such a problem that on Board Game Geek you can find a thread that is literally spoilers for what should be underneath those. And I had to use that eventually because my thing didn't work. And I'm not the only one. This is a common thing that has happened. But, it's a minor niggle, but still, it would affect your game while you were playing it, and you want the stuff to work. I mean, that's what you pay a good chunk of cash for. I mean, it's not a cheap game, although maybe by now, because it's been out for a while, you might be able to get it cheap on the sale. But, it wasn't necessarily cheap when I grabbed it. But, yeah, it's, I don't know, best way to sum this up, but I really do need to go into spoilers, I think, to give more detail. And I'm sorry that this is a bit of a vague video, but, overall, this one felt like kind of just more of the same, but not as good. You're the third iteration now. You've got to knock it out of the park. And the second one did something different to number one. It tried something new. Whether you like it more or not, it tried something new. This one feels like it's playing it safe. Like, it didn't feel like it, changed, I didn't expect it to change Legacy games forever, but when you are the third in the series, you've got to do something new with it. It's the third in a trilogy, and we all know the history of trilogies, particularly with the movie industry, that the third film tends to be lackluster compared to the other two, because it's not necessarily doing something much new at the end. That just seems to be the way. And this one was kind of the same thing. I did like it, and I'm glad I played it. But I suppose I said I was going to say it in the other video. I won't say my ranking here exactly, but I will say that this is probably my least favourite of the Pandemic Legacies. I think 1 and 2 were better. I won't say specifically which, you'll have to watch my spoiler video for that. But yeah, this one was fine. It was fine, but it just didn't quite have the same impact as me. I'm giving it overall a 6 out of 10, above average, not really a seal of endorsement. I think if you are going to jump into only one of these games, you're probably still better off picking the first one, because it was the first one that came out. It has probably the most streamlined rules of this one. I mean, this one does have some issues with a lot of FAQ moments with some of the new mechanics that are thrown in, and it did the job, but it's not one that I would say you've got to rush out and grab. It was fine, but that's as much as I can really say. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek. Check out the spoiler video when I put that up shortly after. That will have far more detail as to the specifics of what I'm getting at when I play this game, because I'm trying so hard not to spoil stuff in this game, and it's very difficult to talk about it when you can't spoil. So this is just my overall verdict for the game, 6 out of 10, and hopefully you'll check out the spoiler video to find out more details as to why. Take care, and remember, as always, regardless of whether you're going to end up diseased or not, it's still only a game, so bye for now.